And I think that's kind of the essence of what everybody does here. If you don't have product, you don't have a store. So I'd like to start kind of talking about where that impulse comes from. In other words, when you decide, let's assume that you all have a base assortment. We all talked a little bit about what you have in the store now, but let's start with that. When it's time to change something, whatever it is, whether it's a new item, a new line, add a new category of business, what's that process? In other words, how do you decide when it's time to make a change and what that change is going to be? So why don't we just go back around, start over at this side of the table, and we'll come back around.
Well, for me, I think square footage and turn and the value for the square footage is the main thing. And a lot of times it's a gut hunch. If something's not performing or you're not reordering, you know, it's time to move on.
When I'm buying products, a lot of it has to do with the support I get from the vendor or the rep. You know, the reps that call on me and give me service, and the vendors that give me dating or help me out are the ones that, and our staff can sell, you know, there's so many different lines, and my staff can sell anything we put in front of them. So as far as the vendor, you know, relationship is very big for us in our buying process.
I would say ours is probably, I try to, with color, I watch the fashion trends 2 years out. With tabletop and that, the same thing. Clothes and that tend to follow in that line. I try to, you don't ever watch Food Network. I watch it all day long. You know, I try to get to know the chefs in the area or what new food trends are coming so I can kind of be ahead of the curve. I'm a little lucky because Florida's always at least a year or so behind, you know, and whatever curve it's going to be, it takes that long to trickle down to us. You know, there's some things that I get in and out of one time, you know. A lot of it has to do with timing. I did used to have 5 employees, and what I did learn from that is it could be a wonderful product, but if you brought it in at the wrong time of your year, if an employee sees it sits there for too long, they get a negative concept. So do we as, you know, the owners, that it's just not a good product. It might just not be that product's time, you know, or it might not be the time for it in your store. But that's kind of what we kind of try to work through.
It really depends on each category too. I mean, there's things that have to wait a few months just for people to see it over and over to. I mean, one thing that we just brought in is the ISI, so I think is a fabulous thing, but I think it's going to, still at the price point, maybe 5 years ago that price point would have not made people think, but right now, $50 is something to consider a little more than they were 5 years ago. So.
For us, it's driven by a lot of different things. We listen to our customers, number one, and a lot of times they lead us down the path. Sometimes we're early adopters, and it doesn't always pay to be the early adopter. Sometimes we come into things late, you know, and I wish that we had started a year ago. But we really just listen to staff, we read trade magazines, we go to shows, we listen to customers, and the in and out is difficult at this point because our store is pretty mature and it is full. So moving something means bringing something new in really means displacing something else. And so we go through sort of a litany of analyzing the process of really looking at it, looking at the numbers, looking at sales history, looking at margins, looking at what the opportunities are, and also working with vendors on how we're going to make it work. I think you can't discount vendor relationships at all. You know, it's a huge relationship game, so they're very important.
Well, one of the most important tools in our store is a little clipboard that sits underneath the counter where the register is, and it's called the wish list. And everything on that list is something that a customer has asked for or asked us to special order, or if a customer has walked without buying anything, we put on that wish list what they asked for. And at least a couple of times a month, we go through that wish list and take a look and see what it is that customers have asked for that we're not carrying, okay? I think that's important. We try to stay ahead of the curve. We have a saying, if you find it in Wally World, it's not here, okay? We got off of it a year before they bought it, okay? We try to stay ahead of the department stores. We try and stay ahead of the big box stores. That's what makes our niche in the market so important, is that our customers expect us to be ahead of the curve.
We do a lot of the same things. Instead of a clipboard, we have a recipe card box that we put them in by vendor. Also, if we happen to be out of stock on an item, that helps us know if what we keep. What customers want is a big driving force. As I said, we're kind of still growing up. We started very small, so we will pay attention to the vendors. And I mean, many times if we bring a line in, it's not moving, and we don't have the same manufacturer's rep for it, that may guarantee its death also, because I don't have the support as well.
A lot of the things that people have said, instead of a box, we just have a list up front that's called missed sales that we try and look at, I try and look at, that I encourage people to put, our staff to put things down if it was a coherent thought, not somebody, I'm looking for something with watermelons on it. Yeah, okay. But if somebody's, and if we've heard of the same thing more than once, then, start investigating it some. We also encourage the staff, anytime that we can get an item from a vendor, and it's going to be based a lot of times on case pack, but if we can special order it, we will. We'll special order anything from any vendor we carry, as long as we can get it. And we have time frames that, some vendors, we try and be honest with the customer, it's going to be 8 to 12 weeks because I only order from 4 times a year. But if the customer's willing to do that, then we'll do it. But if we've taken a special order for an item more than once in a reasonable time frame, I'd look at bringing in 1 or 2 extras and putting them out on the shelf and seeing if they sell on their own.
It seems like most of you have wish lists or specific items. You listen to your customers. So a lot of times you're coming into it with a specific item in mind or a specific product in mind. That's fairly direct. When you want to do something more general, you want to add a line, you think there might be a void in your assortment, I'd like to kind of get to what is that process for figuring out, let's just for sake of argument, I'd like to add a new cookware line, okay? Just pick that, and if somebody would rather work on cutlery, that's fine, but you want to add an additional cookware or cutlery line. What's that process? How do you go through that process?
First thing I do is call some of the other people that are at the table here. I would call Michael or Mary, Larry Oates, with a kitchen art, because he's very close to us, not demographically, but regionally. So the regional preferences are similar, and Michael's fairly close to us. Learn from the other stores.
Number one step in the process, at least for a mature store, as many of ours are, is to figure out what we're replacing and why we're replacing it. Was it price point? Why is it no longer selling? And do I need a similar product from a different company, from a different country, from a different price point perspective? Or is that category falling off and I've got to look for something in a similar category, like a non-stick cookware to replace a stainless, etc.? Okay, I think the first process, the way we start the process, is to figure out what we're going to get rid of and why we're getting rid of it, and then decide what we're going to bring in to replace it.
So what these guys are saying, and Steve's right, I mean, we pick up the phone and call each other or email each other and see if anybody has carried that product before and sort of what the track record was. But I think you've got to look at, really look at the history of the company, look at the product, and also look at what their plans are for advertising it. Is it new? Are they putting any effort and energy behind it instead of just trying to get it placed? Or, what are they doing to bring it to the public? Because we can only do so much. So where's the support on the back end? What are the co-op opportunities? What's the program? I mean, we look at all of that. And then, to Mike's point, what are you displacing and why? And how are you going to do it? And how does it make sense to your tiered customer base. I mean, we're in a
I'm going to
situation-
say a lot of my research from bringing a new product in, and I go to the internet, I go to all the top websites, I look to see what their best sellers are, you know, that type thing. I just kind of, if you use their knowledge, there's a lot more people backing them than in my store. So I just search the internet, go to all you guys' websites or whatever, you're always putting bestsellers up, you know, Win Sonoma, whoever it is, you know. But it definitely comes down to what's going to work in that. But that's where we kind of start our research, is there first, you know, and then when I get down to picking the product, you know, we go in that order.
No, and it kind of goes back to the vendor support and stuff. And, whether it's a Hinkle, Tri-Ply, or All-Clad, or Regal wear, my staff can sell it and we guarantee it. So, we tell the customers to try it out. And so, we can sell them much. They come in asking for All-Clad or Calphalon because they know those names, but we pretty much can sell whatever, we want. And back to the support, it's the support not only in marketing, but at the store level, in merchandising, the point of sale. And I think the vendors seem to lose touch. They have these great, beautiful showrooms in the house for show. And then get to the store and you got 20,000 items and nothing's standing out because the vendors don't have any kind of point of sale material, signage, or ways to set your cookware or whatever apart.
That I look for from a vendor, and it's something that I discuss before I put in a new line, is I want to make sure that I'm going to have plenty of samples of product on hand, because one of the things that we do in our store is we send product home with customers. You interested in a cookware line? Take this pan home and try it for a week. Okay?
Checkout library, if you will.
And if I don't have product that I can hand out to customers and say, take it home and try it, then I'm not going to sell that line.
You say you have a checkout library?
Pretty much. I mean, we keep 1 or 2 pieces of every cookware. If they're not sure, I'm sorry, but getting a whole line of Viking, that's an investment.
Yeah.
I've got a piece of everything at my house or in the store. Sure, take it. Why not? All you're going to do is either make a really satisfied customer, because they're bought into it now, if they like it, and if not, next direction.
You started to do a little bit of research and due diligence. What's the next step of that process? You look at the vendor, maybe you go to the houseware show. Do you now bring it in? Is that, okay, I'll test it? Tell me a little bit about that. Is there a testing process? Do you commit?
If it's cookware, it's a definite testing process, and I don't test fry pans. I test 3-quart saute pans, because to me, that's the pan I use every day. So I will have every fry pan lined up on the burners, or, we'll test them for time, we'll test them for ease of use, clean up. How heavy is it? In my market, heavy is a big, big thing, because it's a lot of older people, and so that's a big deal. But yeah, that's the way we do it, is we test it to see.
Yeah, we definitely test any major line that we're going to bring in. We'll
Right.
test heavily,
Yeah.
and to have multiple staff members test it. And also checking the buy-in for the staff too, because the staff can sell anything, and if they don't like it, they can also not sell it at all.
That's right.
It's important to get buy-in on what you're doing, but we test it, and then we start working on the program and what that's going to look like, and what the terms are, and how we may be getting out of what we're displacing, and all that piece of the negotiation.
You have to do that, definitely, because you know what? At the end of the day, you're the one facing that customer. We are the face of that company to that customer in our community. So if you don't believe in the product, why bother?
Yeah. It's really important to look at your merchandising plan too. Where is it going to go in the store, and what's it going to look like? And do you have a way to really present it in a style that's going to make it successful?
Well, for us too, people have talked about point of sale and the way it comes across to the customer in the store. For us, since we're a larger space, there's not a lot of one-on-one interaction with customers at first. So it has to catch their attention, and then they have to get interested, and then they'll either seek one of us out or. So I think the appearance on the floor and the point of sale and all of that is key to building this new section.
Susan, do you have a testing process, or once you decide you want to add something, how do you go about that?
We try to get samples, and, I mean, we're a smaller store. If nothing else, we test it. We try to get samples into the employees' hands. I mean, that's a big point, especially on a cookware or more expensive line, is to get the employees. I try to get demo product and pass it around, because, again, you know, if they don't like it, I mean, I'll use as an example, my children have a cookware that they like, and when they work with me, they will try and promote that line over other lines, even though it's not as well-known a name, because they're like, you know, this is a much better bargain, Mom.
Well, yeah.
Have a rep that's going to be able to come, you know, every couple of months or at least 3 or 4 months and can spend a day or a Saturday demoing the product. You know that there's guaranteed sales and, you know, creating a loyal following on a particular line that every time that rep comes, you know, we're selling a couple $1,000 of food products.
Well, and spending the time training your staff.
Right, exactly.
Yep. When you get a new line, there has to be somebody that can do a competent training. And most of the time, that's not the rep. The rep is the relationship with the store. They don't need to be the geek. But the manufacturer, especially if we're talking cookware or cutlery, the two
Absolutely.
biggest for that, the manufacturer, the importer, whatever, they have to be the one coming out. Don't tell me that Ron Lubitsch is going to be doing a training. He's one of our reps. He's a great guy, but he's not going to be, you know, able to do the training for a new line, because a lot of times they're probably new to that rep too. Otherwise, you would have known about the line 10 years ago. So you need, if you've already made that decision that you're bringing it in, if you don't get buy-in from the sales staff, it's just going to be paperweights. And so the vendor has to be able to do a competent training.
I think Steve just touched on something else that we really haven't talked about. When we talk about putting in a new line, for most of us, what we're talking about is new product, not product that's been on the market for 5 years or 10 years. Most of us, when we're looking to add a cookware or cutlery line or an electrics line, this has got to be something that is not already out there in a lot of other stores. And I think that's a consideration. So I think, talking about the houseware show, I think that probably is our primary source of new product, much more so than reps coming to the store, because we'll go there and we'll see, you know, and we may buy 20 new products and only 3 of them work, but we'll make enough money on those 3 that we can afford to eat the markdowns on the other 17.
That actually raises a real interesting point. People always talk about newness. Even within your existing assortments, what's the shelf life of a particular set of, whether it's a set of cookware, a set of knives? I mean, how often do you need to refresh that assortment? Even if you're not changing out the brand, even if you're not changing out the vendor, even within an existing vendor assortment, what's the shelf life of that assortment before you feel the need to bring in something new to refresh that for your customer?
I think you have to have an innovation every year. I mean, you know, we'll take All-Clad, for example. We've been selling that since day one. You know, it's got a very long shelf life, but specialty pieces, different things, different opportunities, I think it's important, because there are people who collect it and they want to have more of it. I mean, one of the things I understood after being in business for a while is that when you carry really great, high-quality products that last a lifetime, they're not going to buy another one. You know, right. A lifetime. So we have to thank God for glassware. It breaks. But you got to have something new and interesting to keep them coming back. Or, you know, that's why gadget business is so great and big, because people are innovating and they're new and different things. So I think cookware is harder, but there's still opportunities for improvement.
Basically what we do is, say with All-Clad, you know, or Le Creuset or whatnot, I'll just pick out like tagines or something, you know, just redo the display, make the tagine the star of the show. God knows probably none of us have ever used a tagine, but it looks cool. Everybody wants to know what it is. I mean, you know what I'm saying. So
It
for
starts
us,
lots of conversation.
It
Yeah.
starts,
It
for
gives-
us,
it gives you
for
a
a
conversation
cookware, because
starter.
it is. A 2-quart saucepan is what? A 2-quart saucepan. It was the same it was 20 years ago. Well, this year it's gonna be different, but hey.
We'll
but,
start into the holiday season, and, you know, I'll have those customers that only come that, you know, fourth quarter of the year. What's new? What
Yeah,
do
what's
you have
new?
new? You know, so
What's
you've
new?
got to at least have a couple pieces. I mean, you know, talking about all clad, I mean, I ordered in the 40th anniversary because somebody's going to want that just because it says that. May never use it, but they'll hang it in their kitchen.
And if it's not a new, you know, if it's not new, maybe it's improved. There's got to be something about it. And one of my vendors has a slogan, Immer besser, which I think is great. It means ever better. It means ever better all the time.
Okay, so that takes care of the new within the assortment. What about totally new? Finding a hot item, identifying a hot trend. I mean, I remember, I think one of the first times I talked to you, it was the ice cream ball, right? It looked like a soccer ball, and
Oh, yeah,
shake it
yeah.
up. And, where do you find those items? And I know you're going to say the shows. Okay, that's, how do you find it at the show? Because we all know endless aisles. How do you find the item, and how do you decide that's the item?
They're in categories.
Well, I was just going to say, for me, it's one of the hardest things, because just like this show, for example, I tend to overbook, and I'm appointment to appointment to appointment, and I never get to look around. So like Chicago is the perfect example. You just got to take the afternoon and walk it. And start on, you know, start with the new guys on the ends or the back or wherever they put the new booth rentals or whatever, and look for that new product that's exciting. And you can also tell that there's a buzz, there's a crowd, you know, go back and check it out when you can.
In tabletop and giftware, that's definitely an up and down roller coaster. That's something I have to get in and get out of. It's totally color trended or by, you know, what the styles are at the time. I always work, in Atlanta, they used to have up and coming section, you know, like new vendor section, and you would go, I always do one day, I just walk. I walk temporaries, I walk whatever. We do gourmet foods and that, so I do that for temporaries, but I just walk. I walk through the furniture, you know, section over in building 1 and 2, because you're going to pick up your color trends from there. You know, there's companies that are hiding out in building 1 and 2 that have got houseware stuff or kitchen goodies, you know, that just might be that one little extra ticket, you know, to add. So I'm looking for that little extra something to make me different from the big guys. You know?
Sometimes categories just kind of develop, you know, like popcorn was in my store. You know, I have a little shelf of popcorn, and it's become an entire department now. It's like as important as cookware and bakeware. It's like we have this. It started out with we sell different flavor. You know, I didn't realize it's like wines. There's like a million different colored popcorns and different. And then you have the bowls and you have that. Now this, it just, you know, and people keep demanding, and it's selling and building, and for us, popcorn is like, it's like this huge category for us now. It's like, it just kind of develops, depends where you're at, and it's amazing. You know, we dedicate now probably, you know, at least a 15 by 20 square foot area of just popcorn stuff. And it, you know, another, you know, SodaStream was a kind of when it came in, another item that, talk about a company that knows how to merchandise, promote, and understands the point of sale. You know, what a great, I don't know if you guys carry it, but that's another area that, you know, everybody carries it, but who cares? You know, we, got the little TV thing going, as you walk by, it turns on, and, you know, and it tells you, and then we have all the flavors that keep bringing people back, and, you know, again, sometimes it just develops, you know, starts as a, you know,
Yeah, sometimes it's,
I mean, who saw the Santoku coming?
Yeah.
Rachel, I love this knife.
Yeah.
yeah.
Next Christmas, no manufacturer could keep it in stock. It's like, holy shit.
I know
It took a single SKU that was like 4 a year to being the #1 SKU in every manufacturer for 4 fourth quarters in a row. You know, and but none of us saw it coming. You know, it was your customers coming in. They didn't know how to pronounce it. They one lady, honestly, she's trying to draw me the shape of a knife, and her best drawings were stick figures. I mean, you know, trying to figure out what it was.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had never heard of Rachel Ray at that point either. You know, she was the new face on the Food Network during a time that, sorry, I'm at the store working. I had never seen her show. So, you know, but, you know, for what's going to be the new trend, we're not the ones who make the trend. We're the ones who sell it.
Well, this is what's great about South Carolina. We're about a year or two behind everybody else, so I can see what you guys fail at and what you do really well, and I go from there.
Just pick the right one.
Yeah, exactly. It's very nice because most of my customers don't know what's out there, and I really do have at least 6 months grace period to see what's up.
SodaStream's a great example of one of those items. I saw it at Ambiente 3 years ago. And then I've kicked myself for the last year that I didn't bring it in for a year because I saw it and thought, wow, that's so cool. And then every flavor had artificial sweetener in it, you know. And we get on our high horse about some things sometimes and just, you know, I've knocked myself off 500 times. I'm like, whatever. It was our number one item last year.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. And their marketing and their point of sale materials and all that's behind it. It's got such a great story. It's a green story. It's a... You know, you can do anything with it. And we encourage people to make their own recipes, and I mean, it's a good thing. You got to demo it though.
Right.
People aren't necessarily going to come in and ask for it, but they're coming and they see it and they're like, wow. I mean, they just buy it.
Put it up front and just make sure your people know that somebody wants to try grape. Open one up.
Yeah. The other beautiful thing about that product with the recycle program on the cylinders is that it brings people in all the time. Yeah. So every time you can get a product that becomes a frequency driver for whatever, it's really good.
Okay. Assortments, new stuff. Now comes the really fun part, the negotiation. You made the decision that you're going to add this vendor's line. With that vendor's line, what happens next? And Willard, I saw you shake your head. So this is obviously everybody's favorite part, right? The negotiation.
That's not my favorite part. Well, you get used to it after a few years.
Yeah.
What is that process like? What can you do to maximize that situation for yourself and also to maintain that good relationship with the vendor? I mean, part of this is how do we create win-win scenarios so that you win, the vendor wins, and your customer wins? So how does that process?
Well, I think it is give and take. So of course we want terms, we want all this. We want extended terms and free merchandise for the staff and the cooking school, and you want everybody stocked and our demo team on board. But you have to do, it is give and take, and they usually present, I mean, if they're serious about the commitment and building the relationship and really giving a true test in the store, they're gonna make an offer, and you're gonna have expectations, and the two sort of, you know, have to come together. But there are a few things that we insist on, of course, because of the size of our store and the whole emphasis on excitement and education. You know, there's going to have to be lots of samples. We've talked about that for the staff and the demo cooking schools. So there's certain things we can't budge on because they want to be successful in our store. Like I said, we're not a lot of one-on-one in a small situation. It's more of a department store feel in that sense. Certainly better service than all of that, but it has to be involved with the demo and cooking school as a selling tool.
Sure. You know, in the negotiation process, I don't think price is as important to me as, again, the support. And I'd pay more for an item if I knew that they're going to help me merchandise it and demo it and sample it and sell it. You know, if you can help, you know, I think that's, again, what a lot of mistakes that vendors make is they sell at the house or show, and that's the last you see them. I feel like, you know, insurance salesperson, you know, it's like, but it's a follow-up after the sale. It's important to me. And, you know, there's not a whole lot of negotiating usually. And I like the idea of map retails, you know, especially, you know, dealing with, you know, all the competitors in the area and the chains and stuff. But in negotiation, you know, co-op is good for, you know, we do a lot of marketing and spend a lot of money advertising, so co-op is always good. And maybe follow up with our staff, SPIS for the employees, you know, and get the product in the hands of our employees to bring home or try. And yeah, I'd rather pay more for a product and get that in the negotiation, get all the support around it, you know. So
basically that we look for, that to me is where the gourmet catalog comes in. It cuts out for me the negotiation. you know, that's just one thing I don't have to deal with. Then it's not the price that for me, it's usually not the price we're negotiating. It's the samples or the shipping or the point of sales or display fixtures. You know, a lot of times that could be the make or break idea, you know. So all of that comes into it for that part.
I think that, you know, having the gourmet catalog or a buy-in group negotiate some of those basics for you is great because it takes the pressure off you of trying to either buy at a market and so you can get that every day and you can really make solid decisions, making sure you're fitting within your budgets, that kind of thing. So that, I mean, it kind of expands upon that. But then also, I think in the heat of, you know, markets, you know, people are making promises to you, whether it's reps or manufacturers saying, oh, I'll come out and, you know, demo this, I'd love to come out. I'm like, oh, really? But I'm taking them up on it, and most of the time they will, you know, follow through if you really push it, but be willing to, I mean, I really live in the middle of nowhere, and I had, you know, I just, okay, you said, didn't, okay, you know, follow up on it, yeah.
I mean, I agree with everything everybody said about that, and I think as long as you keep, I'm in this business for the long haul, so, and probably most of our vendors and reps are too, and as long as you keep the long-term goal in mind, then I think you're going to be okay, and you're going to wind up with a win-win situation. But as soon as you start getting short-sighted and in the moment about what it is, then I think that's when things kind of go wrong. But you've got to focus on it being a win for everybody.
For me, there are a couple of things that are really important in negotiation. One is consolidated freight shipments and free freight on back orders. And two is when I'm dealing with a vendor, for me, it's first half discount, second half dating, because I don't have a huge influx of cash in May and June to pay for dating orders. So it's first half discount, second half dating.
Makes perfect sense.
Pretty much what everyone, you know, says here. I mean, you know, buying group helps in that, in that case, I found many more, once I joined, many more sales reps were willing to take me seriously. I guess being in a small town, they think, you know, there's nothing outside of the Beltway. Well, guess what? There is life outside the Beltway. And, you know, and negotiations sometimes is how desperate I am to get a product in there. I had to fight to get some products in there. You know, made a great fan of one of the sales reps because I wanted that product so badly. I said, create an order for me. You know, tell me what you're best selling. And it actually worked in my benefit because there were several items that I probably would not have ordered that I ended up selling out of immediately. And I got the product in, you know, 10 days before Christmas and was able to make a splash with it.
I think most of the things have already been covered as far as this. Michael touched on a big one, freight control. Freight is huge. It's getting bigger and bigger. Every time that you start up the UPS roll ship software, it does an update for the fuel surcharge. Fuel surcharge updating. It does it every time you start up the software. You guys, a vendor that ships a back order of $20 worth of merchandise and then they have a $12 freight charge on it. Sorry, no. My order said no back orders on it. I'm not paying it. You got to control the freight. If you're not able to fulfill the orders, especially if it's, you know, a new line, you know, you're saying you're not interested from the beginning. You know, you have to, when a vendor is pitching to us, they have to know how many different stores they're pitching to so that they know that they can fulfill all the orders. You know, don't sell product to 50 stores if you can only support 30 doors.
Correct.
You know, we don't all need a 50% shipment. You need to pick half and do 100% and start the buzz out there, and then, you know, more of us will be happy to join on. But you got to have the freight controlled, both fulfillment rate and then also the, you know, shipping it sensibly. For something that's major, There has to be, you look for something additional in that first shipment, because that first shipment is going to be huge. Look at what Lake Crusade did with fennel. They did a decent job on putting together a program. They did it in multiple layers. It was kind of nice. It was unfortunate that their shipping wasn't that great. They back ordered a whole lot on their initial shipment. Now, they pay for the freight, so it doesn't hurt us individually, but it also does because it's part of their expense level, which is part of the reason why the margin with them isn't as high as it could be, because they're spending a lot of money paying UPS's fuel surcharges. So that, freight makes a huge difference on things, that more so than I think that a lot of vendors understand.
I did actually have a company pay to displace another company. They said, we want to be in your store big enough that we want to buy out the things that you are going to lose money on. And that was huge. That brought in the new company, no doubt. I said, I don't have space. I've only got 1,400 square feet. I don't have space to bring it in. And they said, all right, we're going to give you this much in free product. And I think it was $400 or $500. I mean, it was a lot. And I put the other stuff on sale, got it out of the store, brought in the new company, and sold out within 8 weeks. So it worked well for everybody involved.
Can we get this guy's name?